I think we're live.
We're here. Hi. Welcome, everyone. It is Thursday night, Generational Change. I'm Jen. No.
I'm Peter. What?
That's me.
That's you. Me. Now you're way too close to the camera. You give me shit about being too close.
Well, that's why I did it, because I was trying to be even with you.
Okay. All right. Well, now we can be even.
I learned that from Kim. Kim's people, her producer people, they're very insistent on everybody being proportionate with their headspace. Yeah, I'm just saying. So guys, when you watch Kim Iverson, you will notice her guests and her are always proportionate with their headspace. Very professional. We don't have that here. We don't even have our own heads proportionate. Hello, everyone. It is Thursday night. Yeah, I had a day of news grieving. I woke up this morning to learn that Val Kilmer died. So my day started with Val Kilmer being dead. Then I watched the Electronic Intifada, had a good cry on that. They brought on actually live one of the American doctors who's in Gaza right now, and what's been happening the past couple of weeks is they just executed 15 UN workers. More journalists have been killed in Gaza than in all the previous wars combined. And the past few weeks has been particularly gruesome. So, yeah, that's what I did a lot of, and watching people that know what they're talking about laugh at Trump's lack of knowledge of economics.
Well, the problem with Trump is that it's a reflection of all the problems that we have in our government, is that Trump is good at basically one thing. He has one true skill. He's a master marketeer, which is a hell of a skill to have in politics, especially in terms of campaigning capability and, drawing a crowd. He's, like we always say, he's a modern day P.T. Barnum. He has a very unique style that, especially in a world of politics today, which is so corporatized and corrupt and lack of personality, it's easy to see why he was able to get as far as he did, despite all of the obstacles that were thrown in his direction. That doesn't mean that he's capable of governing. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people forget. It's one thing to say that you admire My audio sounds like a coffee can, Michelle. Could you be any more polite about it? What can I do to fix it, guys? What can I do? Well, part of the reason why, just so you know, I am on a travel sabbatical right now, so I don't have my camera and I don't have my microphone.
It's fine. It's not bad, Michelle. You might be new here, but this is all. We have a low bar. You know what I mean? Like we can hear you and we can see you. So you know that's as good as we're gonna get.
So I think that's always been the misnomer about Trump, is that I never thought he was capable of governing. I think he's capable of, kind of boilerplate, boiler room, if you will, capability. I think he's actually fairly decent under pressure. For whatever reason, some people are just good with that type of a scenario. I think Trump can handle those types of scenarios. But in terms of day-to-day governance and in terms of understanding the short and long ramifications of these tariffs and what they will mean economically for a lot of people, is it possible that there will be some economic balance as a result of them? Maybe, but maybe not. One thing we know for certain is that a lot of people economically on the working class rung of the ladder are going to suffer as a result of this. We do not have real trade. What we have is corporate trade, which is all based on whether or not we can get the lowest number possible for employees so employers or shareholders can get the most amount of money. In that case, a pie does exist, and the pie is very small for the people that actually produce. So as you know, our current system doesn't work. It's not going to work. But as we've discussed, Trump is going to accelerate this dissolving of our current system faster than anything else could have possibly been done, whether Kamala got in or whatever other scenario we would have been looking at. You've said we had an opportunity. We had an opportunity to course correct a decade ago.
Yep.
Democratic Party decided that we should all go fuck ourselves and accept the demise that is coming by screwing over Bernie Sanders. And that's it. That's
why. I kind of look at it that they didn't decide that. That's just who they are. They preferred Trump to Bernie. We all got to see the mask pulled off. And now we know that is just political theater. So I think it's just been a very mask off moment for everybody the past 10 years. But I don't think it's anything inherently different than the previous few Democrat administrations. I think it's been on this course since, again, we could say Carter, we could say Reagan. We've been on this neoliberal corporatist trajectory. And it doesn't matter who's sitting there. And the older I get, the more it's just so obvious to me that it really does not matter who's sitting there. Not for the vulnerable people. Not for the vulnerable people. Which is really the only thing I'm concerned about. When we talk about what's good for the rich people, I don't follow that. I don't care. So when somebody says, "Oh, they're great for the stock market," not my concern. So however, the trajectory has been for vulnerable people has been poor, consistently poor, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who has a majority. It doesn't matter even if you have filibuster-proof Senate. It doesn't matter at all. We are headed in the same direction, which is, if that is not like the glaring sign to everybody that it's all the same. It's all the same.
It is the same. But the difference, of course, as has been described by many people, whether in our space or just political philosophers in general, have been articulated probably even better than we can. The Democrats represent death by 1,000 paper cuts, and the GOP represents a nosedive. But specifically, a nosedive in the context of what Trump is bringing to the table right now. Trump is convinced in his mind that tariffs are the answer. Not a living wage, not single-payer health care, but tariffs. That's what's going to solve the problem. You can't have it both ways. That is the misnomer that I think so many people have about what's going on right now. And if you need any further proof, and we'll get into this with our hopefully wonderful guest, Kimberley, as well as John Nichols of The Nation. the fact that the Democratic Party is touting what transpired on Tuesday as some type of a victory because they didn't lose so badly, or that they won a Supreme Court seat in Wisconsin. Keep in mind, the
And I
reason
am
they
thankful for that, by the way. Sidebar.
yeah,
That is
oh,
actually
absolutely,
important. So let's
100%.
be take the win.
But the reason why the Supreme Court went the way that it should have in the state of Wisconsin is because no amount of money will change where people stand on crucial issues that affect people's lives, like a woman's right to choose. And if you think, if Elon Musk spent $100 million, they still would have lost, because that's an issue that was a single issue going to the ballot box. Are you pro-choice or are you pro-life? Forget that it's Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's not pro-life. They're not pro-life. They're not. They're anti-choice. They're not pro-life. If they were pro-life, then they would be all about like prenatal care. They'd be about like helping maternal leave. They'd be about helping people be able to raise healthy children and giving them healthy food. So no, they're not pro-life. They're just anti-choice. Please correct. Self-correct.
Okay, I am self-correcting. So I am here to tell you that our problem is pretty clear cut as far as I can see. I think that when you get right down to it, it's all about whether or not we have corporate special interests controlling our government, which we do, and that is only going to get worse, which it will. And no amount of, oh, look, the Democrats only lost by 17 points. That must be better. Hypothetically, if all these races went in the direction, that would look a lot different. Yeah, let me ask you something. Is every single congressional race going to be outspent by the Democrats 10-1? Because that's pretty much what the numbers were. It might have been higher than that.
And so it brings us back to what we have been talking about, Peter and I, for a long time. It is just a grift. The WCCC, which is white collar campaign carnies, they make so much money on these campaigns, and they will continue. And by the way, the same people will get hired no matter how many times they lose. It doesn't matter on the Democrat side. So the industry, the campaign industry, is all they really have. That's all they care about. So they're going to continue to outspend, out fundraise, and outrun, because all they're doing is feeding an entire industry of their friends. But in terms of actually winning seats, they're never coming back. They're never coming back. And people need to come to terms with that. And I by no means think that the Republicans have it going on. I just know that the people that are getting annoyed at the Republicans, no matter what Trump does, they're not then jumping over to the Democrats. That's what I know. So they might be pissed at Trump and they might jump from the GOP, but they're not supporting the Democrats. That's what people need to understand. This isn't going to be like it has been over my lifetime, where every 2 years it goes back and forth because whoever's in office, we don't like them. So we put the other person in charge of the House. So we think like it matters, except it's not working anymore.
Nope.
The jig is up. So what's going to happen now is the Democrats are going to continually just lose and lose and lose. And their little grift machine will continue to profit as long as it can. And then they'll just, poof, they'll be gone. They'll be gone like Jack Nicholson in Witches of Eastwick. Poof.
I haven't seen that, so please don't ruin it. I figured I might see it one day.
It's a great movie, but when all is said and done, it all came down to gone. So, and that's what's going to happen to the Democrats.
I think
and Cory Booker can roll that up and smoke that in his pipe.
I don't think he smokes, but you know.
No, but it's like his performances, his, theater is so blatant and obvious. And anybody who really thought that there was something cool about that, or he's our guy, or anyone who had a positive thought about that probably wouldn't be watching us. But those are the people that are the problem. all the people you know that in any way would be like fawning over Cory Booker's filibuster and sitting there and bragging on it and talking about anybody who is doing that, which first of all, it's only going to be a lib. It's only going to be a Democrat, right? Those are the people that are the problem. So when people do that, you could say, you're the problem.
Well, do they fully understand that? Because I saw a headline come out today. You know, of course, Nikki Fried, who is still the chair of the Florida Democratic Party.
We've talked about this.
Yeah. We've turned a corner. We've turned a corner, and we are now back. We're back, as she wants us to believe.
Nikki Fried is the chair, for people who don't know, is the chair of the Florida Democratic Party. She's now this is her second term, I guess, that she just got again. And, you know, they're falling apart. They have no support. They're losing ground. All they do is register Republicans. Like, they're so pathetic. But at the end of the day, she's apparently a rainmaker, because that's how this all works. The person who brings in the money is the person in charge. That's why Nancy Pelosi is in charge. That's why Hillary Clinton's in charge of the DNC. The person who brings in the money is in charge. So if they have good ideas, cool. But usually they don't, which is why they have to use their money to be in charge, because they otherwise wouldn't be selected. So those are the kinds of people, and those are the rainmakers, and that's who gets to be in charge.
Yes, that is correct. And look, I don't need to get into the stereotypes, but Nikki Fried checks every single box that you could possibly imagine. Her background, where she's from, what she's done for a living, the fact that she was a statewide elected official in Florida that just happened to be in the right place at the right time in 2018. It is what it is.
In a very easy winnable seat.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that, but
at the time that she won that seat, it was not some like groundbreaking thing how she got in. It just isn't.
No, I don't think so. In fact, the margins were pretty thin to begin with. She just happened to slip in the race where you were talking about Rick Scott running for the Senate against a 3-term popular. Let's be fair. I mean, you know, Mr. Nelson was a relatively popular senator for his day, even though he was old and shouldn't have been running again.
Looked like a game show host from the 70s.
But that was it's fair, but that was a very razor thin race. And as a result, on the margins, Nikki was able to squeeze in by a very, very slim margin. Nevertheless, she took advantage of the 4 years as a statewide representative and now has a very comfortable paying job that no one's going to take from her. I mean, as long as she's supplying any type of a lifeline to the Democratic Party in Florida,
that's the thing. As long as she's bringing in money, she'll get to sit there as the party just dwindles and dies. It doesn't really matter. I actually don't have any particular problem with Nikki Fried. I really don't. Couldn't care less either way. Like, she's just, it could be any corporate lib and it's the same thing. Like, there's no, you know, she's not particularly nefarious. She's just in it for a job and a career, just like a lot of them. I don't think she's so particularly nefarious.
Well, I think if we were to ask our esteemed guest, I think she would agree that they're all nefarious. They all have an agenda.
Okay, I just meant in a sense that more so than anyone else that would be in her position. Like, that's what I mean. Like, there's nothing particularly horrible about her.
I think that the party as a whole is just particularly horrible. That is what they are. And that is why we have seen the Republicans do what they need to do, which is win their races. They didn't have to overspend, although we'll get into Randy Fine. They lost the Supreme Court race because this country is pro-choice, period. No matter how much money Elon spends. While the Republicans are winning races, the Democrats are bragging about Cory Booker giving a speech. If that doesn't encapsulate exactly where we're at in terms of what is considered valuable in this moment, I don't know what does. But as we continue to see the crumble of the empire, who better to talk about it than somebody who I can imagine has anticipated that this was coming for quite a long, long time. From the Black Agenda Report, you know her, you love her, Margaret Kimberley. Welcome back to Generational Change.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
How you
Good
doing?
to see you. Good. It's always good to see you.
Yeah.
And we'll get into the New York thing. Obviously, you're very in the position to talk about what's going on in New York. But what we're seeing here in Florida, which I think is representative of the whole country, the Democrats really are going away. I actually do not think they'll win another national race. Not this incarnation of this party. I actually don't. And I think they'll exist in places like California and some other places here and there, but I think they're kind of done. What do you think?
I wish I could say that with certainty, but I'm not sure that's true. We have this crazy system where they can be up and then they're down. So who knows? It's possible, but I wouldn't be unhappy if the Democratic Party disappeared. Parties come and go. There were the Whigs; they died. I think they became Republicans. Anyway, there were all these various incarnations throughout history. So I wouldn't be sad if the Democratic Party finally flatlined and we didn't have them anymore. But nature abhors a vacuum. So what would replace them? We need a real left party. That's what we need. We need a workers' party in this country. But unfortunately, the Democrats are kind of like the U.S. empire, failing, but still powerful enough to kill. So they will do anything and everything. They even destroy the fortunes of leftish Democrats. So I don't see them going quietly. I don't think that's going to happen. But in this current incarnation, it is pretty sad for Cory Booker to spend 25 hours talking about nothing. Except, sending out his hat. This is how you give money to my campaign to promote him. I guess he wants to run for president again. I'm assuming that's it. And to call it a filibuster, and just so folks know, a real filibuster is conducted to stop something from happening.
Gee.
So Strom Thurmond did talk for 24 hours straight back in the 50s in order to stop some civil rights legislation. So that's why you filibuster. You don't filibuster just to talk. I mean, has he done anything to stop Trump? Anything? I mean, and then after he finally stopped talking, they all confirmed a Trump nominee. So it's just sad. And some people are actually impressed. I've had like semi-arguments the past day with people say, listen, he just did this. He was filibustering. No, he didn't. And individual Democrats are also a problem, get mad at me because I'm pointing out something that's true. And I guess we've all had those situations. But, and too many Democrats, because Trump is in, any performative nonsense like Cory Booker or, Jasmine Crockett, she has a quick tongue and okay, so she's good with rhetoric. Well, all right, that's fine. But what does that have to do with fighting Trump? Nothing. Nope. And or even Bernie and AOC with this tour. I think it's sheepdogging again. It's unfortunately not breaking with the party who shafted him twice. So, I think we got to start with our own people too and help them to understand what's really going on and that there has to be a break.
Well, the key ingredient here that I think we can all agree on is that while the Democratic Party may not be dead, they are slipping substantially. And I think the reaction overall from people regarding this speech, it wasn't a filibuster, guys. By the letter of the law, it's not a filibuster.
You know what? It could have been an interpretive dance for all I care. I could not care less. It was so stupid and self-gratifying. I honestly.
Let's play his speech. If everybody's got 25 hours and 24 minutes.
And mind you, this is somebody who doesn't support everybody having health care. So I don't know what he's,
we'll get to what he does and doesn't support.
Saying. All right.
We'll get to what he does and doesn't support in a minute. But here's what Mr. New Jersey Senator, and I'm in New Jersey right now, here is what the Senator of New Jersey had to say.
Of disrupting the normal business of the United States Senate. For as long as I am physically able. This would be a crisis for elder care. This would be a crisis for disability services. What it is, when a nation isn't taking care of its elders, it's a crisis of our national character. Why are so many women dying in childbirth and in the postpartum period in America? Shame.
Because you don't support single-payer health care.
Because they don't have health care. I'm going to go with that.
That's my guess.
So it's
That's
easy
a
to
real
wrap
enigma
your
there, Cory.
arms and say that, oh, why don't we have these things? You are one of 100 of the most powerful politicians in the world. In fact, probably the most powerful governing body in the world is the U.S. Senate, and he happens to be one of them. And he's up there flapping his lips about what is and what isn't. He's as big of an impediment as anybody. Anyone who knows anything about Cory Booker knows that this guy is a pharma whore of the highest order. Of the highest order.
Well,
He's also a Zio. He's also a Zio.
We'll get to that.
Can I talk about how he got his start politically?
Yes,
He
please.
was a Yale Law School grad, I think. He got a seat on the Newark City Council, and he moved into the projects to prove he was going to be one with the people. It was like,
oh yeah.
At any rate, then he ran for mayor. He had a lot of right-wing money behind him, like the Bradley Foundation. Their thing was school vouchers and charter schools and so forth. He had right-wing money behind him, and he was able to defeat the long-term incumbent and become the mayor of Newark. And of course, he parlayed that fundraising prowess into becoming a U.S. senator. His first big political speech was at the Manhattan Institute, the right-wing group that exists to promote conservatives. So he's putatively a Democrat, which tells you everything you need to know that's wrong with the Democratic Party. That somebody who started out with right-wing backing is now a Democrat, has run for president, and apparently is trying to do that again. And then holds forth talking for more than 20 hours about things that he doesn't like but doesn't do anything about. So I think all of those are important things to know about him. And as you were saying, he's an AIPAC conduit of AIPAC money. He met with the Israeli official, the former defense minister, who the ICC finally issued an arrest warrant for. So he's hanging out with Israeli war criminals. So that's who Cory Booker is. He even had a fake relationship with an actress when he was running for president. I mean, I thought
Rosario Dawson.
Yes, and it was as phony as a $3 bill. So this is Cory Booker. This is the person that we are talking about.
We'll continue.
Painful. And now, I just found out that the community violence intervention money that you allowed me to fight so hard to get into that bill is being clawed back by Donald Trump. They're writing me letters with words like fear and terror. They're talking about staying up at night and not being able to sleep because they don't have a president that comforts them. I mean, it's almost like you can't make this up, honestly. Another story from a Social Security employee in New Jersey. I am a claims representative for our Social Security field office. The most dramatic changes I've noticed from our recent change in operations is that our appointment calendar seems to be filling up more quickly for simple post-entitlement changes. We've gone through healthcare cuts. We've gone through Social Security being attacked and undermined and slashed. If you're revoking somebody's visa, make a phone call, tell them that you have 30 days to leave. But there should be due process. You should have to prove your claims in court. If this person is somehow lying with some kind of enemy, prove it.
And that's what a Yale law education gets you. There's something called due process. I can't even. How long is this, Peter? How long are we subjected to this?
Another minute or two. That's it.
Good God. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say another 24 hours, but luckily I'm
the thing is, it's like,
person.
Well,
you don't need more tax cuts.
I was going to say, if we're lucky, Trump will bankrupt Yale University and all the Ivy League schools, They've all been
listen,
exposed.
just excuse me. You gave me a great idea. We're totally going to do that. I went to Penn. I went to the Wharton School of Business. I'm the smartest guy in the room. And Yale, really stupid people, especially if they employ people like that guy.
Cuts. And we as a society have an obligation to each other, to those farmers, to those rural folks, to the cops I stood with at the funeral of one of their colleagues in Newark 2 weeks ago. Our Social Security offices are being closed already. And the question of why, under the guise of efficiency, but you're hurting our elders who deserve dignity in their retirement. It's stunning to me. I've had farmers from New Jersey to Texas coming to my office about this president freezing contracts that we approved in a bipartisan manner, putting them in financial crisis. It's not right or left, it's right or wrong. It's not a partisan moment. It's an American moment. It's a moral moment. Does the wealth of our people, we have more billionaires than any other country, does that speak to the greatness of our nation? No.
He's totally dissing his donors right there. I don't know.
Well, it doesn't matter if they diss them. It just matters if they're at the end of the day. And this is what we'll conclude with. In fact, we can actually do this here.
Make him go away.
Here's a guy who actually slipped in. Not many people know this, but he slipped in around, I think, the 11 or 12 hour mark, a comment about his support for Israel. Now, that's not being talked about. Now, that is something that they decided to ignore. Now, people like us, we know where he stands on Israel. For those who don't know, Mr. Booker considers himself an honorary Jewish person. Now, maybe it's because he happens to be a Democrat in the state of New Jersey, and there are a lot of wealthy Jewish people in the state of New Jersey, and he always has to maintain an even keel. But no, he really is committed to the Zionist cause. He identifies Mr. Shmuley as his rabbi. He says, my rabbi, I'm a black Jewish American, is what he's calling himself, and Rabbi Shmuley was my rabbi. As far as I'm concerned, there were two things that we pointed out in our social media.
Davis Jr. is rolling over in his grave about right now. That's how ridiculous this all is. Okay.
Margaret, the only thing that truly matters about this speech, as I would explain to anybody, is much like how we ended up with Trump in the first place. Cory Booker does not support the very policies that would actually change the lives of the people that apparently are suffering under Trump, most notably single-payer health care, Medicare for all. And the other one is the fact that he is as in bed with the Israel lobby as anybody in politics, having taken almost $1 million from AIPAC alone. This is not somebody who is fighting on behalf of working people. He has a reputation, which is understandable because most people on Capitol Hill suck to the high heavens. But Cory Booker has a reputation of being a very nice guy, and that's why he is able to skate in many ways past a lot of scrutiny. Well, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as we should all be concerned, because we all know he's going to try to parlay this speech into some type of political opportunity, whether it's through money or even, dare I say, another presidential run. Make no mistake, things are changing, and we are done with this bullshit. We should all be done with it.
It's a funny thing you said about the donors. After the election last November, they were done with the Democratic Party. Many of them were saying, we raised $1 billion for you. How did Kamala Harris lose? So there were some donors who said, sorry, my checkbook is closed. So if the Democrats died, that'll be part of the reason. But you know, this guy he's just such he's a chameleon. And of all people, Rabbi Shmuley, there's no other rabbi he can name. Aside from this awful man who also we can thank for giving us our crazy Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., who says, oh, there's always measles outbreaks. No, actually there aren't. But at any rate, this tells us everything that's wrong with the Democratic Party, that he talked about all these things. He's done nothing to stop. What about the continuing resolution? If he was going to have a real filibuster, that was the moment to do it. But I just hope that he's exposed And I really, as I'm talking here, I'm realizing the need to try to educate Democrats who, when a Republican wins, are ripe for, ripe for the picking. They will believe anything, grasp onto anything. Cory Booker or some other person who shouldn't even be considered or taken seriously, because we've got to stop Trump.
Yeah. Well, I was just saying that before. Like, if anybody wants to know who the people are that are holding up progress, any of your friends or the people that you know that are in any way touting Cory Booker after that performance, those are the people that are the problem. Those are the people.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so, on it's so insidious that the party is so bankrupt of even as being a political party. They don't even act like a political, they're just a money laundering operation in my opinion. Yep. And so they don't even do, I mean, if you want, let's say, remember Hakeem Jeffries saying, I don't know if we have any leverage because the government's theirs. I mean, off the top of my head, I could think of things you could do if you really wanted to oppose Trump. So, for example, the Republicans, because they're getting an earful, say, don't hold these town halls. Go hold a town hall. You don't need a visa to go to a red district. Go and say, all right, we're going to have a town hall. You're not having them. We're going to have them. And we're going to talk to your people about the terrible things that Trump is doing. Just as an example, they don't want a bully pulpit. They don't. And I have to tell you, too, a lot of them collude. Columbia University, I'm still annoyed at Columbia University, who just folded like a cheap lawn chair. They have donors who are Trumpers, and they may use the issue of Israel, and they should have stopped the protests. But at the end of the day, the rich people who could have used money to fight Trump gave in to him because they're not really in opposition to him. If it were up to me, Columbia University would be closed down and we'd have a city college school there in its place, instead of these worthless schools that sit on billions of dollars and cost a fortune, and ordinary people can't send their kids there anyway. What good are they? Let's just get rid of them. And
tax haven. Tax haven.
Yes. Yeah. I think $14 billion endowment. They don't pay a cent in taxes. In New York City, they stole property through eminent, it's theft as far as I'm concerned. Eminent domain is a fancy way of saying theft. So to hell with them. I hope they all disappear and that we find a new way to educate young people.
If you are concerned about your education, and you know this as a New Yorker, you know what the #1 school is, guys, to go to in the state of New York? It's not Cornell. It's not
Isn't
Ithaca.
it CUNY? Isn't it CUNY?
It's not NYU, and it's not Fordham. And it certainly is not Columbia, despite what people will have you believe. No, if you really, depending on what you're looking to study, but the highest rated overall university that I've spoken to with a lot of people, because I used to work doing the fundraising for colleges throughout the country, in New York in particular, SUNY Binghamton is as good a school as you could possibly go to, and it costs peanuts on the dollar compared to all these other schools. Now, not everybody wants to go all the way to West New York to go to Binghamton, but I can assure you that you want to be a doctor, this is the school you want to go to. You don't need to go to Fordham to become a doctor, despite what people will have you believe, that you need to go to these rich aristocratic schools that are, near the theater district and places like that. That's not the point. Now, this is just a money-making operation. And Columbia has shown its whole ass for quite some time. But it also goes to show you how much of the Zionist state has been seeped into our politics. Now, I don't know very much about Zoran Mamdani, but I'm sure you can tell us more about this.
I like him.
Yeah.
I like him.
New York State Assembly member who's running for mayor. We have a mayor's race, which became more interesting today. Our discredited and disgraced mayor says he's going to run, but as an independent. Andrew Cuomo wants to run, so everybody by now knows Eric Adams.
I'm going to do a great job this time. Give me a chance. The Cuomos for New York all the way.
Eric Adams is a crook. He was indicted on corruption charges, but he's a wily crook. And he talked to Donald Trump. Trump said he believed he'd been treated unfairly. which tells you something about Adams, that, Trump wants to champion his cause. So he was hoping to get a pardon, but Trump did even better. The Trump DOJ asked the judge to drop the charges against him. That is what happened. And now he knows he can't run as a Democrat. So there are a lot of people, Zoran Mamdani, some other folks, Brad Lander, the current comptroller, people with, progressive bona fides, but there are too many of them. And they're going to cancel each other out. Andrew Cuomo is also running. He has a big war chest. He's got lots of rich friends. So he is the front runner by virtue of having money. And Eric Adams has upset the apple cart by saying he's going to run as an independent. He doesn't have to worry about the Democratic primary. Now, I don't know what the odds are. I don't know if the people who gave him all that money want to give him money again. So that is the great unknown. There is a group that just came into being very recently, the Break NYC, encouraging Mamdani or another leftist to run as an independent, to ditch the Democratic Party and not to bother with the Democratic primary. So this is life for us in New York City. We could end up looking at Eric Adams again, or even Andrew Cuomo. Oh my God. Who, in case people forgot, killed a lot of, that's the thing I hate him for the most during the pandemic, sending old people into nursing homes. And among others, and his pet, I have to tell you, I'm a Green, as you know. He made it harder, impossible, frankly, for the Green Party or Libertarians or any other of the smaller parties to get a ballot line. He stole our ballot line by increasing the threshold of signatures for nominating petitions. And in New York, in a general election, you can only vote for Democrats or Republicans. Working Families Party is basically the Democrats. That's who they are. Mm-hmm. So you don't have real democracy. You don't have choice. And that's because of Andrew Cuomo, a sleazy figure who, because he has money, could end up being the next mayor. So let's say his fundraising prowess, because of that, he wins the Democratic primary. But Eric Adams is still, and do people hate Adams more or Cuomo more? I guess that's the question now. So I'm not sure what's going to happen. I can't make a prediction. I do like Mamdani, but I hope he also does not go into that hornet's nest that is the Democratic Party, and that he runs independently. He runs as an independent candidate.
Okay, so is it that he hasn't? I mean, I saw somebody post an ad that he did that looked really good. I mean, I would think he would have already said, is he running in the Democratic primary or is he running as an independent? But I mean, I have this thought that maybe Cuomo and Adams sort of split the filthy vote. Like maybe they just sort of, I don't know, the douchey people like kind of split there. But it's unfortunate there's so many people that need to come together under what's his name, Mamdani, who apparently has a ton of money and is already telling people he doesn't even need more money.
I don't know why he's saying that. You always need money, but it's like, who's ickier and why is the big unknown in New York City. Eric Adams, half of his deputy mayors quit. People have been indicted or perp walked in handcuffs, including a former police commissioner, among other people.
Oh, he sounds just perfect for the job then. I mean, this what
but Adams, he's a strange character. He ran as a conservative. He wanted the New York Post endorsement, and he got it. The New York Post endorsement. So conservative New Yorkers, he keeps talking about crime, which is down actually, but that is, he's feeding in to that right wing, that racist narrative about crime. So we have National Guard in some subway stations. It's so stupid. They're on their phones. They're not. Nobody's safer because there's a National Guard guy on his playing with his phone at a subway entrance. So I don't know what's going to happen. I cannot make a prediction, But what we need in this city that's becoming less and less affordable for working people, where a lot of working families are just leaving New York altogether, mostly because they can't afford to live here. They can't buy the neighborhoods where people with moderate incomes could buy a house. You can't buy a house there either. So that's sending people out of New York. The gentrification is off the charts, and we need somebody who's going to fight for the people of this city.
Well,
yeah, I saw something about that people are actually fleeing New York. Like, it's definitely, the population's been decreasing over the past couple of years. I mean,
yeah, it has. It decreased during the pandemic. A lot of actually more professional people left because they were working remotely. You could go anywhere. So people left and went all over the country. Now, the thing that keeps New York's population from cratering is immigration. We've always had people coming from all over the world here. And the last couple of years, the asylum seekers coming through the border, that was a lot, which put a strain on a lot of city services. But it's a population. And so, yes, it's been dropping a little. It has rebounded somewhat, but not to pre-pandemic levels. There's still a lot of people working remotely. So subway ridership, while it's still like, I don't know, 3 million rides a day or something, it's still down from the pandemic or the pre-pandemic levels. So it's things are in flux in New York. It's hard to find. The cost of housing is outrageous. There were always places where you knew you could get an affordable apartment, but that's it's like a needle in a haystack now. So everything that people need in this city, those needs are not being met. For a long time, it was treated like Bloomberg was mostly responsible for this, I think. New York became a theme park for rich people to live, and that was nice for them, but not nice for working people who'd been here, whose families had been here for generations.
One of the things that we remember from the last mayoral race, we've been pretty friendly with Andrew Yang. We also had on a handful of others. The Latina lady her name is slipping me right now. Jen, you remember her name? Would come on.
Oh no, I can't. I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
running out of Queens. But the point is, the thing that kind of really came to a head during that particular race was this blind loyalty and fealty towards the state of Israel. And in the state of New York, especially New York City, where you have the Manhattanites that are extremely pro-Israel, you have the entire neighborhood of Riverdale in the North Bronx, which is all Zionist. And then obviously you do have the conservative blend that comes up. No, that Jessica Ramos is running now, but there was another lady who ran 4 years ago. 3 years ago, but it'll be, the election that's coming up. And of course, then you have Staten Island, which tends to be pretty conservative. And that's where obviously Adams got a lot of his vote splits. Right now, the issue of the genocide is coming to a head. It does seem that Zoran is the one candidate that is making this a part of his campaign in a pretty big way, considering how significantly things have changed over the last few years. But I do want to play this clip because I think this is very significant. And Jen, I don't know if you saw this, but Netanyahu, if there is one world leader that I think would be capable of dropping a nuclear weapon, it's this man, and this is why.
צה"ל תופס שטחים, מכה במחבלים, הורס את התשתיות, ואנחנו עושים דבר נוסף. אנחנו תופסים את ציר מורג. זאת תהיה הפילדלפי השנייה, ציר פילדלפי הנוסף.
Considering that he's from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, how many people actually forget that point? Just the use of that language right there is incredible, but admitting as much that they're seizing territory. So they are doing exactly what we said they were doing all along, and everyone wanted to pretend that they were just fighting Hamas. Yeah, of course that's what it was.
משום שאנחנו עכשיו מבטרים את הרצועה, ואנחנו מוסיפים את הלחץ צעד אחר צעד, כדי שיתנו לנו את חטופינו. וככל שלא ייתנו, כך הלחץ יגבר, עד שיתנו. אנחנו נחושים להשיג את יעדי המלחמה, ואנחנו פועלים ללא לאות, עם קו ברור, ועם משימה ברורה. ובעזרת השם, בעזרת חיילינו הגיבורים, אנחנו גם נשיג אותה.
There is going to come a point.
There's so many disgusting things there. This pretense that they care about the hostages. The hostages are a bargaining chip for Israel. Netanyahu actually hopes they get killed. It really disgusts me, this pretense that he cares about them. This was always a war, an ethnic cleansing war. Now he has Trump, and Trump has said that they want people, and they're saying what we already knew. If you were paying attention, they asked Jordan and Egypt to take in 2 million people. My first point is, why do they have to leave their homes? But that's their goal, to eradicate the population of Gaza. They want to kill as many people as possible and force Jordan and Egypt to take them in. They don't want to take them in because it will radicalize their populations, though both those countries are client states of the U.S. And there are a lot of Arab governments that are openly or covertly working with Israel, but their populations don't want that. Their people don't want that. And if 1 million Gaza Palestinians come to Jordan and Egypt and remind them that they have this traitorous leadership, then that's a problem for them. But Netanyahu is saying, oh, and by the way, the ICC finally, it took them many months, issued an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu, and he has no fear that he will ever be arrested. And I just want to say that the system of international, law and international jurisprudence is a joke. It was a very narrow arrest warrant. It was for depriving people of humanitarian aid and food in Gaza, which he brags about doing now. So the ICC is a joke. The International Court of Justice is a joke. Netanyahu goes all over the world. He doesn't have a care in the world, and he's got the United States behind him. And my big fear is that Trump will start a war with Iran. This is something that Israel has wanted the U.S. to do for a very long time. And so I don't know how to express my level of disgust that this genocide is going on, because it's bipartisan policy in this country. Biden, Blinken, all of them should be before the ICC if there were any real justice in the world.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I don't know if we ever were. I mean, you would know better than me, Margaret, but I think it's, we don't care at all about rule of law. Not at all. It does not apply to this country. We do not care. In fact, what we do is then we attack the people that are trying to get people to comply with international law. And then people are so shocked in this country that this new, what I call Mangione monetary theory, because Mangione economics is what? Are you familiar? You're familiar with Luigi Mangione, right?
Yeah, but I didn't know we had a school of economics named.
I did that. I'm calling that's what they're going to get, is Mangione monetary theory. Because when you have so much violence and it's constant, we're a whole society full of violence, and then turn around and actually with a serious face, any of these people that do these press conferences on behalf of the administration, that violence at these demonstrations and these are violent protests and violence has no place and violence isn't the answer. And I think, oh, but contraire. I actually think that we've proven violence is the only answer, and that is the level that this oppressor has determined was reasonable. And that's where we are now at this point. And I'm not, I'm angry because I don't like that I have violent thoughts, because I don't want to think like that. But I seriously watch people like Netanyahu, and I just think, yeah, we need him dead. These people need to be dead. They need to be dead.
He's probably going to die peacefully in his sleep in his bed in his old age. And that's a great injustice for the world. But what they're doing now, and we have to say it's Zionist groups behind the snatching of these students, that they can be called terrorists, that they're wholesale going through the list of student visas and just without informing the visa holder, without informing the school, just saying you don't have a visa anymore and you can be detained. The student an Iranian student in Alabama, they don't know. He wasn't involved in any protests. Nobody knows why. The Venezuelans who were snatched and sent to El Salvador, and these judges. When is somebody going to charge someone in the Trump administration with contempt of court? How many cases have these judges said, don't take them out of the country? You can't move them down to Louisiana, and they do it anyway, and they don't pay a price. Yeah, that's the most dangerous thing, but it's been incremental. You start with doxing people, harassing people. You have rich people in New York telling Eric Adams, you got to go on Columbia's campus and arrest people. So it didn't start with Trump. And who went along with this genocide? It was Joe Biden. So Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that big phony who was working tirelessly on the ceasefire, they deserve as much condemnation as Trump and as Netanyahu and all the leaders, so-called, in Congress, Republicans and Democrats, for whom this is something that they will not stop and will not question. And all our human rights, our civil liberties are at stake because of it. I really think Palestine is central.
I definitely agree. And I think that on the domestic side, the Mangione story is still front and center, as it should be. The fact that the DOJ, but more specifically Attorney General Pam Bondi, who's just a toady, let's be honest, that person just does what they're told, to seek the death penalty for Luigi Mangione and his CEO Brian Thompson murder case. As has been pointed out, AG Pam Bondi has ordered the DOJ to seek the death penalty. Luigi Mangione alleged. I didn't see nothing. I don't think you saw
nothing.
You know, an innocent man and father of 2 young children, Brian Thompson. I don't think Brian Thompson is an innocent man. I don't think he's innocent at all. In fact, as far as
fathers of young children, it's like when you deprive people of health care, you're killing people. So a killer was killed. And I don't understand how this is a federal case anyway. How is this a federal case? Why is this not a New York case?
It is. It's both. It's both. But the only way they can get the death penalty is on the federal case because New York doesn't have the death penalty. So they have to have this. But the problem is there still hasn't been a federal indictment. And I don't understand exactly what they're going to be able to charge him with federally. So it's interesting that she's seeking the death penalty when there isn't, he hasn't been indicted on a federal case yet. Like, I don't like it's just all posturing is what it looks like to me.
The DOJ,
it's lawfare. You're using the law to get somebody that you can't get otherwise.
Well, the DOJ is saying that the attack is an act of political violence. Well, you know what? The act of being the only developed nation on earth that doesn't have a single-payer healthcare system is an act of political violence that we are aware of. 70,000 at a minimum die every year from a lack of health coverage in the United States. That cannot be quantified in any way other than it's mass murder. That's what it is.
Absolutely. And, we've normalized, this country's normalized violence. That's violence. You kill people because you tell them, oh, sorry, you're not covered for that. The fact that we have more people in prison than any country in the world, that's normalized. That gives Trump and others license to expand that system. War, the fact that is it still half the federal budget, the Department of Defense, which they should actually call the Department of War. Go ahead and let's be honest about it. Our money goes to kill people. Our money goes to private insurance, which doesn't help us. Our money goes to help to sell weapons or give weapons to Israel and other countries so that people die directly because of public funds in the U.S. As you can't keep normalizing these things and not expect it to have an impact on ordinary people and the way people perceive Mangione. I mean, who condemned Mangione?
The people.
I don't think they're not going to be able to find 12 people in New York to convict him. I don't, because I am someone who actually, I do care about law. Like it mattered to me. I say that past tense because at this point it's like that shit is just out the window. But I am telling you right now that I could be, if I were sitting on that jury, I would watch the evidence. He could turn around, smile, and wave at the camera. I'm going to know that the kid did it, and I am still going to acquit him. And the problem is, if I feel like that, a lot of people feel like that. So they're not going to be able to get him. I mean, that's why they have to keep doing this trying to get a federal thing going, because they're not going to be able to convict him in just a state jury trial.
And as his attorney, Karen Agnifilo, has said, by seeking to murder Luigi Mangione, their decision is political and goes against the recommendation of the local federal prosecutors, the law, and historical precedent. While claiming to protect against murder, the federal government moves to commit the premeditated state-sponsored murder of Luigi Mangione, including in what is probably the most difficult state in the union to get an execution, which is New York. And so this should come as absolutely no surprise, because this is a political execution. This is how they feel that they are going to stop the movement towards universal health care in the United States. As far as I can see, this is only helping further the cause, because it's proving that Luigi was right, if he did actually do it.
Right. I think it's a very difficult case for them, because he's generally a sympathetic figure to the average person. I mean, he was caught at a McDonald's. I mean, it was something very weird. If that they had this manhunt, this nationwide manhunt, and some quirk about a McDonald's in Pennsylvania that he was captured at all. Eric Adams, who we've discussed already, he felt obliged to join the perp walk against him, looking like an absolute clown, which is what he is. But at any rate,
I want to play one little clip, because obviously, we're coming up on the hour, but I think this is very important because, Margaret, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but Jen resides about 15 minutes away from where Patrick Bet-David does his major political podcast studio shindig on a regular basis. And he had the audacity, and there are a lot of things he says that I don't agree with, but here's the thing. When he tries to play stupid, that's when I get upset, because he knows better. And when you put out a clip like this asking yourself, how is it that a pharmaceutical drug like Ozempic costs peanuts in the UK and costs an arm and a leg in the United States? This is what he had to say.
Ozempic, $88 in UK, but it's $1,200 here in the States. He's asking those questions.
Yeah.
So now Trump's not a guy that wakes up in the morning studying the health and supplements and vitamins. That's not his space. He's
Definitely
real estate. He's media, right?
Yeah.
But now he's sitting there and asking a basic question. So a basic question like that carries a lot of weight, because the average person can understand. Wait, how much is Ozempic in Europe? $88. Why is it $1,200 here? I don't know. I want to know. Great, let's go pursue it, right?
There is nothing to pursue. There is nothing to think
Let's
about.
pursue that.
There is only
Let's look
one
into
answer.
that. We're going to investigate that further. Well, let's set up a commission to study the costs.
Let's be like Democrats. Let's set up a commission, let's do a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse, and figure out why we don't. We do not have a single payer system, which the UK has, and that is why they pay 10% of what we pay, which is even less, because $88 to $1,200 is about, what is that, 7%? Something in that neighborhood. So they pay 7% for a drug that, first of all, I'm not a fan of that type of stuff. But listen, some people in certain instances, maybe they have to use some type of a weight loss drug. And Ozempic does seem to work for a number of people.
That's not much business why anybody uses anything. That is the most upset. It's not for us to determine what people should.
Hold on a minute.
If people that don't like people that use food stamps on certain things and
that's
shit
not
like
that's not true. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm saying, is the drug actually safe? If it's not safe, that's a different story. But what I'm saying is, in the UK, you could spend $88 for a prescription for Ozempic. In the United States, it costs $1,200, and you're playing stupid about why it costs that much. There's nothing to think about. It's pretty
There's
clear.
one more, capitalism. We have a health care system, so-called, that is for profit. So the big pharma, they make a fortune. Even hospitals, these supposedly nonprofit hospitals here in New York, they're all making a fortune. The health insurance, the big pharma, it's all about money. And we don't have Medicare for all, single payer, whatever you want to call it, because those people who are very powerful, who give the Cory Bookers of the world millions of dollars, do not want to be out. They will be out, and that's not acceptable to them. And they are the oligarchs. Let's use the word oligarchs of the US. They control the political process, so we don't get what we need.
She said it, so it's got to happen.
Oh, all right. So Jen's pretty crafty.
And we're back full circle with the Oligarch Chronicles. And this is how I think of those four people. Like, this is what I see in my head when these people are talking. And yeah, this is what we're living with right now, people. I'm sorry, Margaret. You said oligarch. I had to bring it up.
Well, we live under billionaire rule.
Yeah.
Does anybody really doubt that at this point? I mean, does anybody is there anyone, do you think, that's still asleep at the wheel and still thinks that this is some type of a democratic republic? It's not. Like, stop it.
I think people are in denial about so many things. And if you say that, if you accept that as true, then you have to do something. You may even have to just think differently. And I think people feel immobilized because we're so propagandized that you can't change anything. The only thing you can do is vote, and it's lesser evilism. And so just shut up about wanting anything different, and don't be mad at the rich people. If you work hard, you can get rich yourself. And excuse me. So that's what passes for political discourse in this country. But I'm looking askance at anybody who doesn't hate all those people.
Right?
Well,
they're very loathsome people. They're ridiculous. That's why, like, they're caricatures, and they really are. And I will say this before you go. One thing I am happy about with the Greens is Butch Ware running out in California, and the potential that might have to stick it to the duopoly in a place where they might have the power to do it. So it reminded me that you were green. I forgot you were green.
Yeah. Well, we need more of that. People need to see Greens, others who are not Democrats or Republicans running for. That is democracy, after all, isn't it?
I mean, when you get right down to it, if you are not the darling of the corporate establishment, why in the hell would you run in the two-party system? It doesn't make any sense. You're not going to get anywhere anyway. You're just wasting time. You're wasting resources. You know, we talked at length before you came on. I mean, listen, I will always be grateful for this young gentleman who, helped Jen as best as he could, but he's part of the system. He's a consultant, he has a business and he raises money. And of course he did a hell of a job of doing that. And of course he took a lot of heat from the likes of, David Hogue, among other people that are just in it for a career. They don't actually care about it. But the problem we have here is you raise all of this money to run races that you can't win, that you can put as much money into as you want. And the Democrats, I believe, outspent the Republicans about 10-1 over the course of, these congressional races and what ultimately came into the Supreme Court race. At the end of the day, it is a dying, it's a dying brand. Like, in so many ways, it's a dying brand, because they're not willing to change and go to a place where they need to go. As far as I'm concerned, anyone who is going to run for office right now that is going to run for especially on the message of free Palestine, which I don't care what the hell people talk about. If you don't think that this is an issue that affects us all the way to the local level, then you don't understand politics. You don't understand the corporate control that the Israel lobby has all the way down to local mayor's offices. Like, it's that serious. And so Butch Ware has a real opportunity in California to cause a shitstorm in a good way, because I'm already seeing people do their little polling things online about the California gubernatorial race. And I even noticed that they did mention Butch's name. And I'm thinking, all right, listen, he may not have a boatload of money to his name yet, but we know he's got some. and we know he's running, and we know he's going to potentially be a pain in the ass. And you want to just not acknowledge that he's in the race? Please keep doing it, because this is why people hate your guts. You'll acknowledge the Republicans that are running, but
they
not
prefer them.
Well, I have to say this about electoral politics. I hope people are learning that we have to have movements outside of electoral politics. There's got to be, and you don't even have to know. I think people get tripped up thinking they have to know exactly how it's going to work. I'd say just start there. We have to have grassroots organizing back in this country and stop acting as though electoral politics is the only way that we can get change. It's always been actually outside of the electoral system. So that's how you get rid of Trump, but you don't end up with a Biden or a Kamala Harris or Cory Booker or somebody else horrible.
You are a gem. You always have
Thank
been.
you.
And having you here makes our show better, because people may like to see us, but they really like to see you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I just want to do one thing. I just want to remind people to buy my
Oh, yes, please.
Prejudential, Black America and the Presidents. It's an excellent book.
It is an excellent book. And I also will recommend, I like the audio too. And the audio is very good. But guys, but the cool thing about that book is you don't even have to go in order. It's glorious that way.
Thank you.
Even and I can still say it's a great book, even though I have a soft spot for one president and one
I know. Sorry about that.
Killed it all for me. She killed it all. It was like I had one last holdout, and then it was like, forget that. Now they all suck.
For me, as I've always said, the reason why Teddy has a soft spot for me is because he's the one president that, when faced with the corporate oligarchy, he sided with the workers in the railroad strike at the very beginning of his presidency. And that took a lot of balls. Not just, again, he had Booker T. Washington as his first guest.
Oh my God, you said that to Margaret. Oh my God, you said that.
Hold on a minute. Now, hold on a minute. Now, even though Booker T has the reputation that he has, why don't you go back and look at some of the newspaper headlines in the South when he invited Booker T to the White House? You want to talk about racism of the highest order at a time where they just let it fly as bad as could possibly be. All presidents are flawed, but I would say Teddy is probably the closest we've got to anybody that was even worth saying a decent word or two about.
Says you.
Read the book. Read the book and decide for yourselves.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Margaret.
Love you, Margaret.
Love you guys too. Thank you so much. Good night.
Always one of our favorites, and she's and really knows her stuff. And it's amazing. And it's amazing the timing too, because as we like to have our schedule as tight as possible, and we know, especially with the elections that did come up, one election in particular that we did think was of significance, which was the Supreme Court race in the cheese state of Wisconsin. We have to
bring on our favorite Wisconsinite so that he can somewhat gloat.
Favorite Wisconsinite, or is it 1A or 1B, Jen? You can't say.
But in any event, we need to bring on a favorite Wisconsinite so that somebody can gloat that not everything is for sale. Okay?
That's true. Well,
not everything is for sale, Musk fans.
Well, he is a great writer. He's written many books, and of course, he is from the nation, and he knows a thing or two about the Supreme Court and the significance of this race. We have our thoughts. I'm sure he has his. I'm sure he'd also like to hear about what's going on in the great state of Florida.
No, he probably wants to cut us off like Bugs Bunny, man.
Maybe so, but he'll make an exception for us.
Okay.
John Nichols, welcome back to Generational Change.
Hey, it's great to be with you.
Hi, it's good to see you. So I was watching you on Democracy Now! And it occurs to me that I forget sometimes the people that are resources, exactly why they're resources. And it runs, oh, yes, that's a Wisconsin person. That is someone who really understands what's going on in Wisconsin. And obviously we need to talk about that. I did watch a clip of Elon completely making a fool of himself and handing out millions of dollars or whatever other nonsense. But I'd like to hear from you what kind of circus has been going on in Wisconsin leading up to this.
Well, let's just say we gave the Daily Show a lot of material. It was pretty surreal. Look, the thing to understand about all this is that long before Elon Musk came along, probably before he came to the United States, the state of Wisconsin has had pretty rockin' Supreme Court races. That's because Wisconsin's a battleground state. We're almost evenly divided. We literally send Ron Johnson, who is one of the most absurd members of the U.S. Senate, a Republican who actually lives in Florida, to Washington. And we send Tammy Baldwin, who's a quite progressive member of the Senate, to Washington. We, go back and forth in presidential elections between Biden and Trump and Obama and Trump and blah, blah, blah. So when you add it all up, we're a closely divided state. We also have a governor that's usually a Democrat, currently at least, and we have a legislature that's gerrymandered for the Republicans. What that means is that at the end of the day, somebody has to sort it out, between all these divisions, and it's the court. So as a result, both sides of the political aisle, both sides of the ideological aisle have fought for this court for years, going back, into the early to mid 2000s, really brutal battles. And some of them, characterized by horrific racism, some of them characterized by sexism, by, they've been bad and they've been ugly. But this year we beat it all, right? We knocked it all out of the park because it was an open seat that would literally decide control of the court. If the progressive candidate, a woman named Susan Crawford, who's a former prosecutor, lawyer for Planned Parenthood and labor unions, a Dane County judge, if she got elected, the court would retain a 4-3 progressive majority. If her opponent, Brad Schimmel, a former Republican attorney general who literally worked with Walker, he literally worked with Scott Walker at the worst of Scott Walker. If he got elected, the court would become a 4-3 right-wing judicial activist court. Simple as that. It was always going to be an expensive race. It was always going to be brutal, intense. But Elon Musk decided in January, right around the time he filed a lawsuit trying to overturn Wisconsin's law as regards how cars are sold, decided he was very, very interested in Wisconsin. And started moving $1 million in, couple million, tens of millions. As best we can tell, he got to around 25, 26 million, but we haven't counted it all. And that blew the race up to a $100 million race for the state Supreme Court for a job, one of 7 justices on the court. And in the end, it was a bizarre thing because in a race for a court that deals with issues like abortion rights, labor rights, voting rights, the issue in the last 120 hours, maybe even the last week, was Elon Musk. And this was a guy who flew in a black t-shirt, put on a polyurethane cheese head, and danced around the stage in Green Bay, right? Speaking to us all with a South African accent and the whole bit. And at the end of the day, all I can tell you is that, of course, Musk is the richest man in the world, so he could afford the plane ticket. But if he had been unable to afford the plane ticket, I think progressive forces in Wisconsin would have paid for his ticket to bring him in because he was so destructive to the chances of the conservatives. He sort of exposed them for what they were. The general feeling was that Crawford was probably going to win by a couple points in a really tight, really intense race. As it happened, she won by 200,000 votes, 55-45. She actually got when I think it's the highest vote ever for a Supreme Court justice, or certainly in an off-year competitive race like this. It was just epic. The turnout was huge, almost gubernatorial level. Crawford improved percentage-wise on Kamala Harris's percent of the vote in all 72 of Wisconsin's counties. She bumped up, she did better in every region, in every, rural, suburban, urban, blah, blah, blah. So I think the lesson we take away from this is Wisconsin is a marginally progressive state, right? And I won't lie to you and tell you we're all the way where we should be, but we're a marginally progressive state, which on Tuesday, Elon Musk made very progressive.
Well, the thing that I think also has to be addressed is the fact that this was pretty clear cut between the two candidates.
Oh, yeah.
One is pro-choice and the other is anti-choice, as Jen likes to say.
viscerally, can I just say viscerally anti-choice? Like he came out of Waukesha County, where the local politics for decades has been defined by that issue. You could not be a pro-choice candidate in Waukesha County. So Brad Schimmel was somebody who wasn't just, kind of like a wink and nod to the anti-choice community. He was a
true believer. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And as a result, I said at the top, and I'll say it again, Musk could have spent $100 million and it wouldn't have made a difference. This was as clear cut as it gets. People knew exactly how they wanted to vote going in. And then I think because of the fact that I've always said Trump accelerates the shift in our country because everything's in everybody's faces now and they don't like it. So as a result, there was a substantial FU vote against Elon Musk, which happened to fall on this guy's lap as well, as far as we can see.
I think you're pretty right about that. I think that Musk helped to run the total for Crawford, the progressive candidate, up. I think she won by more than she might have won by. But as I said, I think, as you're saying as well, I think she would have won. I think there's another factor here that's pretty fascinating. In last fall in Wisconsin, Trump won very narrowly. And there was some depression of the Democratic vote in Wisconsin, right? In the campus areas, turnout was not as robust as it should have been. I think some of that may have tied to Gaza and to some other issues. Also, there were inroads that the Trump people made last fall among some young, especially men, voters, right? And so there were factors in there that kind of, threw the traditional calculus off in Wisconsin, right? Moved it a little bit to the right. In this moment, 6 months after the previous election, less than that, I think with the clarity of the moment, you saw like a lot of people kind of come back into saying, okay, I've got a sense of what the good vote is, what the bad vote is. It made things, and I've always said they should have had some understanding of that. Some of these folks last fall, I'm not, diminishing the clarity of the choice then. But what I'm saying is I was on the campus 10 minutes before the polls closed, and I saw students running to the polling place to vote, right? They had finished a class. They were running up because they didn't want to miss the chance to vote in this election. And many of them were wearing stickers that said, "I'm choosing Susan," for Susan Crawford. Those were stickers done by pro-choice groups, as in choosing choice Susan.
Sure.
And so spot on for your point, and I just think there was a clarity there. I think the one other thing that's really fascinating is, I mean, I'm not going to tell you that a lot of hardcore Trump voters were moved. I don't think that was the case. But I do think two factors are interesting. One, some marginal Trump voters, I think, actually have begun to move because of Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid, those issues. I've been at town meetings around the state. I've seen some evidence of people, who were either surely or probably Trump backers who are now very concerned. And then one final factor, which I know you two will appreciate because you're such good political analysts. There's a bunch of people who will only go vote for Trump.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
They won't do anything else. No matter how hard Elon Musk tries, they're not going to come out and vote for Brad Schimmel.
No. They like Trump is a unique thing. He's his own entity. There's no Trump-like. That doesn't exist. And I've said it about him before, and he's the most honest liar that I can ever imagine. And I actually do appreciate it a lot of the time. When he says we're in Syria for the oil, I'm appreciative of that. Thank you. You're not telling me that you're there for the people's liberty. We don't care about saving democracy. We're not. No. We're there for the oil.
Yeah.
And I think that he is not something that can be duplicated. And at the end of the day, Musk is just such a douche canoe. He really is. Like, he's so unlikable. His own kids don't seem to like him. Like, I don't know.
But you can't possibly have interviewed all of his children.
Yes.
That's true.
But so we don't know. But this is one thing we do know. Musk could have come into Wisconsin. If he literally had political consultants telling him what to do, he could have come into Wisconsin in a way where he spent a lot of money, poured money in, and then actually came. He could have even come. I know he desperately wanted to, and sit down with people and listen to them for a minute, right? You know what I mean? Do a little focus group, something like that. He could have presented himself as I know this is an absurd concept, a humble billionaire. But he didn't. He literally came in and just kind of put it on steroids. I am here. I'm putting on the cheese head. I'm going to tell you how to vote. And I was doing some TV show, and they had a clip from one of their correspondents doing a interview with men and women in the street. Right? They were interviewing voters outside the polling place, and there was this couple there with their 2 kids, and woman's holding one of the kids, the other kid's kind of running around, and the woman said, she says, yeah, basically, I don't usually vote in elections like this, like judicial elections in the spring. Says, but I was so mad at Elon Musk, I thought I'd come and give him a piece of my mind, right? And the reporter goes, you mean you really don't vote? And the guy goes, no, not really, not in these kinds of elections. I haven't done it that much. And then the woman said, she just kind of bounced back in and said, yeah, he really rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah.
And that's how Wisconsinites talk.
You're
not going to say, oh, I hate him, or I despise him, or blah, blah, blah.
You're too polite. You're too polite.
We are polite, but the fact is, when you hear somebody in a parking lot outside a polling place saying he rubbed me the wrong way, that is probably the equivalent of a Floridian saying something that I can't say in a broadcast.
Right. Probably.
Well, he did. A lot of people do vote on emotion.
Everybody votes on emotion except for a few people. People vote for who they like. They vote for how that person makes them feel.
But they vote for who their parent voted for.
Okay.
That's weirdly. That's one of the demographics, and sociology will tell you that we tend to have. So there's a lot of, and I know that rubs some people the wrong way, but that's just the truth. So we have a lot of factors that decide how we vote. But here's the deal. Most of the time, most of us don't vote. And so the question is, especially in a spring election like this, what makes somebody decide, I don't usually do this, but I'm going to get in the car, drive 2 miles, go to the polling place, maybe wait in line because we had a very high turnout, so you had to register and do all that stuff. The thing that will make them do that is if they're angry. They don't often do it because they're happy, right?
I think people are tired of Elon. I think there's not everybody, but there are a lot of people that are tired of him. And I think
he gives me the ick factor. He's the ick factor. And I think a lot of women in particular feel that way about him. He's icky.
Well, John, I swing between progressive and libertarian in terms of my political disposition. I believe in Doge. I think it's a great idea. The idea you're going to have Elon Musk run the friggin' thing? You think this guy gives a damn about waste, fraud, and abuse? The guy won't even look at the Pentagon, for goodness sake.
No, he wants our data.
Of course. Jen, I think you should bring up the graphic again. John has never seen this. This is perfect timing. These 4 men are basically competing against each other every day to figure out who can own more of the world at working people's expense.
And I'm not going to. I have very little expertise in anything. But I did a number of years ago with my dear friend, Robert W. McChesney, who passed away recently. And I'm very sad about that. But Bob McChesney and I wrote a number of books together. And one of the books we wrote was called People Get Ready. It was a look at robotification, machine learning, and AI, right? And we talked about what was coming. And one of the things we argued, and especially that we've argued since then, is that the great battles of the future economically are for our data. Right. So if you're taking the idea, and even if Musk wasn't trying to get our data, right, even if it turns out he could say he wasn't, the idea that you would casually let somebody who is trying to own AI platforms and a group of, teenage or minimally post-teenage folks come into like all these different departments and play around with the computers, no one in the world would do that. So I'm going to even give Elon Musk the benefit of the doubt and say, that's not what he was doing. Okay, give him the benefit of the doubt. The fact is that the Dick Cheney 1% possibility theory, 1% possibility that something bad could happen here, so you don't let it, you act against it, would have precluded a tech billionaire and his team from getting anywhere near our data. And yet these guys are running around. They have been running around there. And so I don't think there's been a serious, let me pause and say it in a different way. I think 25 years from now, people will be writing books and doing analyses of this 2-month period. And very possibly they will be looking at the question of whether, much of the future of the world was written in a moment where we basically turned over access to everything we know and everything, all of our data, all of our, structures to a tech billionaire and his team of clowns that ran around, playing around in computers. It's governmental malpractice at a level that is almost unimaginable. And for a libertarian, it ought to be the scariest thing of all, right?
Which is why they're not real libertarians.
No,
Peter
they're
Thiel
not.
is not a libertarian. Elon Musk is not. Mark Zuckerberg.
Elon Musk is our country's biggest immigration problem. That's how I see him. He's a problem.
I welcome everyone, but I will tell you
I don't
this.
welcome him.
I know, but I'll just tell you this. I'll tell you this. The fact is that Elon Musk, like many super rich people, may be good at one or two things. There's a lot of things he isn't good at. Now,
and he thinks he's good at everything.
That's the problem.
And that's the danger, because what that makes you, guarantee you, it makes you a monopolist, right? Because if you think you're good at everything, I'm going to start a car company, take over a communications platform, gonna, start an AI company, gonna do all these, I'm gonna shoot myself and other people into space, right? I'm gonna do all this stuff because I'm so great. Well, that monopolistic instinct that comes off that makes for the opposite of libertarianism. In fact, it is a vehicle by which very, very wealthy people use government as a tool for redistribution of the wealth, something that we would understand very clearly from Marx or Engels, right? Except that they are reversing the redistribution pattern. They're moving that wealth upward.
Right.
Now,
they're all for welfare. They're for corporate welfare. This is not anything having to do with like actual capitalism. This is just this is crony capitalism and handouts and slush funds and a bunch of crap like that. There's nothing fair about how they've been doing anything in business.
And I think I think it's also fair to bring up the other side of the coin, which we have maintained for the longest time, is, listen, the Democratic Party, we feel, is becoming a regional party. I think you would probably agree with that. It's becoming very difficult, with the exception of maybe still some pockets of the upper Midwest. It's basically become it's an urban, suburban at most political party. It's extremely regional. And as a result, you get people like our chair of the Florida Democratic Party, Nikki Fried, thinking that they did like something incredible because they only lost by 15 points in these congressional races instead of by 35. And what is actually true, especially about FL06, is that Randy Fine I thought that there was maybe a miracle possibility if the Democrats weren't such an inept, terrible.
Am I right that Randy Fine didn't even live in the district?
Not only did he not live in the district, this is the statement that our governor put out earlier today regarding Randy Fine winning this seat. Get a load of this.
Well, what happened with the Randy Fine is exactly what I said. He would win, but underperform. And that's what happened. President won that by 30 points in 24. I won it by 35 plus points in 2022. Fine is out there saying he won by the same margin I did. That is a total lie. I won by more than twice that he did in 2022 in that district.
Oh my! How small this?
What schoolyard are we playing in here? That's wonderful. That's DeSantis. In the extreme. That's beautiful. So even the Republicans don't like Randy Fine. It's just that they didn't like DeSantis when he ran for president. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say it gets even better. So we got
Wait, let him finish. This is
So what happened there? The media is saying, oh, you know, Republicans had to spend money, and they did. They spent millions and millions of dollars. In 24, not 1 cent had to be spent in outside money in this district. Because, well, I don't know if this, are we actually in that district? I know he's got part of Marion, so it's a little over there. And so the fact that money had to be spent, you know, that's not a good thing. This should have been a going away. And what happened was, and so but the media is trying to say, oh, see, it shows. I think the Wall Street Journal said something about this is like an anti-MAGA backlash. I don't think that's true at all for this district. I think you have a candidate in Randy Fine who, one, he's a squish. Okay. He supported restrictions on Second Amendment rights back in 2018. He tried to defeat my immigration proposal to help President Trump enforce immigration laws, and he tried to enact a de facto make Florida a de facto sanctuary state. So when people see that, our base voters don't get excited about that. You're not giving them a reason to go out and vote. And he's also, just the way he conducts himself, is somebody, he repels people. He's repelled people in the legislature.
He's repelling.
That's fabulous. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, and can I just say, very few people in politics would understand how to repel people so well as DeSantis. But the fact of the matter is, I don't disagree with what he's saying. He's probably right about Randy Fine. I'm quite sure of that. But there's very little evidence that district has cared who the Republican Party put up, right? If you've got the R next to your name, you're going to win the district, right? That has been the pattern. What we saw here was there was a lot of people in this very Republican district who had a desire to send some kind of message to Donald Trump and to Elon Musk. Now, did the Democrats give them a good enough tool, enough of a space in which to do that? Obviously not, because they didn't flip the seat. And this is one area that I've dealt with for a long time in a lot of settings. Special elections are a big fascination of mine. And of course, the classic model on special elections was when Nixon in 73, 74 was in trouble on Watergate. And it was amazing. Some of the most Republican districts in the country in special elections elected Democrats, right? There was this desperate signaling from the American people about the need to make a change, to do something as regards Nixon. We haven't gotten there yet. And I do have concern about whether the Democratic Party has got its act together. You say the Democratic Party is a regional party. I would go a step further. I would say, to my view at this point, the Democratic Party is a collection of state parties, a handful of which are run by really capable people.
Wisconsin's one of them. Not a humble brag, but yes, Wisconsin is one, and Minnesota would be another one.
And I think there's some evidence Michigan does a pretty good job, because these are battleground states, right? Minnesota included. These are states that could go either way.
The problem with Michigan is that it's got way too corrupt of a hierarchy. Well, Michigan politics is very corrupt at the time.
But it's also had a complexity of its politics too.
Sure. But I would definitely say that Wisconsin and Minnesota, if you're looking for states where the Democratic Party can sort of hang their hat outside of a state like Massachusetts, I would say that those are the two states that I think that the people that are pulling the levers of power genuinely care about working people. Maybe not completely overall, but I would say that there is definitely a populist lean.
They know they have to build that coalition, right? They know they have to, and they have to do an urban-rural coalition. I'll give you an example, taking us back to Wisconsin. Not that I want to neglect Florida, but one of the things, Ben Wickler is the chair of the Wisconsin Party. He knows Wisconsin history well. He knows the state well. He's deep-rooted in it. In the week or so before the election, and maybe this is important because we talk so much about Musk influencing things one way. It's important to understand that Wickler and his group, his people, not just the party, but unions and others associated with him, they ran a pretty brilliant campaign. In the week or so before the election, Wickler spent an inordinate amount of time in small Republican counties in rural northern and western Wisconsin. And every time he would cross a county line, he would pull his car over and take a picture, or maybe an aide took a picture in front of the line saying, "Welcome to Langlade County, welcome to Forest County, welcome to Grant County," right? And he'd post that on social media all over the place. And it was a way of saying, look, we're going to fight for these votes out here. We're going to try and get the best vote we can, even from these very rural places. I don't think the Democratic Party nationally even understands that concept. No. That if you can get 35, 40% of the vote in a rural county, that's going to add on to your vote in the urban areas, and it's going to bring you over the top. And the reason for that, the reason that exists is that, in doing Michigan and Wisconsin, is that both of these are states that had an independent third party in the 1930s and 1940s. Minnesota had the Farmer Labor Party, which was really a social democratic party. Wisconsin had the Progressive Party, which intriguingly had a weird sort of social democratic / libertarian kind of mix in it, right? It was like small business and factory workers and unions. And it was this interesting mix, but these two had these different parties that really were outside of the norm of American politics. They were genuinely, by most measures, well to the left of American politics. Those old parties merged into the Democratic Party, but they never really died. And this is something to understand. You understand why Minnesota and Wisconsin stand out. It is because they've got history, and there are still plenty of people who understand, that distinction, right? I'm not a national Democrat. I am a Wisconsin Democrat. I am a Minnesota Democrat. They even had it for a long time in North Dakota, which had the old nonpartisan league. And North Dakota has become a much harder state for Democrats. But that this tradition of having more than a Democratic Party is something that would benefit a state like Florida. It would benefit many other states if there was some sort of deep-rooted progressive tradition that was beyond just the standard mix in partisan politics. And I've obviously written about this for a very, very long time, but I really believe it's the crisis for the Democratic Party. It doesn't have a pull. In most places, it doesn't have a pull to the left.
If you are looking for a good story to cover, we both think that Butch Ware is going to be a force in the California gubernatorial race in the Green Party. I think he's going to raise a few $1 million. I think he's going to be a real pain in the ass, and I think he's a good candidate. I think he's actually a very good candidate. And I think I think a state like California is where the change could actually make a lot of sense. Like somebody running as a Green in a place like Wisconsin or Minnesota, probably not going to get too far because
it's been tried. Yeah.
Whereas I think states like California, you could think of some other states that, would make sense, like a Georgia, for example, or, perhaps even if you want to take it a step further, you could look at a state like New York and all the infrastructural problems that they have, especially with the DNC chair in the state of New York. Places like that, I could see it making a real impact. But I think if there is a model out there, if the Democrats are trying to salvage anything, and I do agree that a sort of a state-to-state approach is probably more in line with where they are at this point.
But it's what you should do, right? You should have a distinctive party in different places. They can pull together at the national level to elect a Speaker of the House, maybe, or something like that. But there should be this distinctive. And where I'll say there's some action right now? It looks like Dan Osborne is going to run again for the Senate in Nebraska. And so you're going to have a machinist running against a billionaire. And this machinist ran last time as an independent. If he runs again as an independent, he was very progressive on a lot of issues, not perfect on, I was out there, I covered him. There's some issues where I disagree with him. But
but John, even if he sheds the label and he still caucuses with the Democrats, just shed the freaking label already. Yeah. People do not want to know.
It's a liability. It's a liability.
In many places. Yeah.
And the same thing's going to happen when Trump's out, because what Trump's going to do, however long he lives post his presidency, he's going to be a true definition of a kingmaker. He'll basically be able to be a political boss of the highest order. I'm a Trump Republican, not a pro-war Republican. Like that same effect is going to happen over there, I believe.
I think there's no doubt. Look, one of the things that I argued before, and I think I probably argued it with you two at some point or another, before the election last fall, was that one party is going to win the White House and the other party is going to go into crisis, right? and because both these parties are in many ways false constructs, right? They exist to hate the other one, but they don't really have a definition per se. Trump has given the Republican Party some definition. It's around him. It's a cult of personality. It's one of the reasons why people don't vote for anybody else. It's also, some of these Trump voters won't vote for other candidates. It is why, and this is a subject of the past week that's been fascinating to me. It's why I think Trump does talk about trying to figure out a way to do a third term, right? Because I think he knows that at this point, at least, the Republican Party is his cult, right? It is his entity. And the fact is, as somebody who's written a lot about these constitutional issues, yes, they could do it. They could run J.D. Vance for president, Trump for vice president, and Vance could stand down. Theoretically, this is a complex thing. There's some legal scholars that'll argue it, but I think they could get away with it. Vance could stand down 5 minutes after being sworn in 2027, and Trump could go on. I don't think the American people would buy that. I actually think it's too complex a construct, and it probably wouldn't work. But I do think that that's how Trump and a lot of the people around him think. I don't think they believe the Republican Party can exist without them. Right?
I also think that we're sitting in a situation right now where I can't stand political hyperbole. I think it's no different than how the consultant class operates. I had to get a text message from Mr. Carville while we were waiting. But what I will say in very pragmatic assessment, Trump is effectively a king. Like right now, he is operating as a king because he doesn't really have an opposition. He basically is able to do as he sees fit.
This is the thing right here.
Go ahead.
You cannot run for VP if you're ineligible to be president. So I don't understand how they're going to be able to do that.
Yeah, and Jen, I'm with you. I understand but where who has to interpret some of this stuff? It's not you. It's not me.
Oh, right. No, rule of law no longer exists.
It's the Supreme Court of the United States.
The greatest Supreme Court in the history of the world.
There is no rule. I have no comfort in justice or rule of law anymore in this country whatsoever. None.
Well, look, obviously, I will tell you, a lot of Wisconsinites do, right? Now, by the way, I want to emphasize on that discussion of the VP president. I'm not saying that they can do it. I'm saying this is what I hope I'm saying this, clearly. This is what I think they're thinking, what's going through their head.
Right.
And all of these variations are on. I do think there could be constitutional barriers. I think there could be a real fight back, blah, blah, blah. I also think the American people would see it as too many leaps through a hoop and too weird a thing. So I don't think Trump's going to have a third term. I just think that's how they construct their thinking about the Republican Party at this point. Now, with that said, with all of that said, right? And I hear you, Jen, that you don't think we have rule of law and you don't think people believe it. Wisconsin, intriguingly enough, on Tuesday, bet on the rule of law. They actually thought, there was snow in some parts of the state. It was cold and rainy in other parts. They just decided in unprecedented numbers to come to the polls to keep their Supreme Court under progressive control. So I think we have at this point in America a real wrestling match, people kind of pulling at these concepts, right? And I take a certain amount of comfort in that. I think that the American people are still trying to believe and trying to, wrestle with and stand up for something. And you'll see a lot out this weekend protesting. I'm seeing protests and activism all over. And I do think that all of this, all the things that we talk about so often, these complex, frustrating, agonizing electoral politics constructs, right? I think they have a lot of meaning to a lot of Americans still. And I think it may be our only hope, right? That people still want to give it a try and believe in it and believe that we can make it to 2026. You can elect a Congress that will oppose Trump and Musk and that will have some meaning. But I will tell you this, and I think this goes to the heart of what you two try and do with your show. I think if the Democratic Party doesn't give it meaning, if indeed there's a blowback from Trump, right, that Democrats get the Congress, and if you create a scorching recession, you might actually create that reality. If the Democrats do not give meaning to their power, I think that's the point at which the whole thing falls apart. I think there's an incredibly narrow window for a Democratic Party that has failed. I wrote a book about it. Has failed for 80 years to give real meaning.
Yeah.
If they don't at this point, I just think it will be. I think it will be politically chaotic. It might lead to a new party system, maybe. But I will remind you that at this point, most of our politics is overwhelmingly controlled by money and overwhelmingly controlled by a failed media system. So if we believe in all of this complexity, right? If we're looking at all this stuff, Democrats had better get their act together very, very fast, or they become facilitators of the crisis, not the solution to the crisis.
I think the future is going to unfold in a very unique way. I don't think anybody could be certain what that's going to look like. I think the philosophy that you have put forth is actually pretty sound in many ways. Perhaps the Democrats are not heading in the direction of becoming a regional party, but perhaps we're going in the direction of the pre-Federal Reserve, which is, you know, I've always said that the 1912 election in many ways may have been the most consequential election we've ever had. And at that particular time, what you're seeing today is sort of a maybe kind of like a rebirth of sorts of just that, where you're going to have the Democratic Party is going to be strong in certain states, but that's about it. In the entire South, in the entire heartland, and in the entire Mountain West, it doesn't exist. Like, it's basically non-existent. And now
Colorado.
Yeah, with the exception of Colorado. And the only reason Colorado is a blue state is because Denver and Boulder have been taken over by all the Californians that didn't want to pay California.
And a little of that is going on in Arizona and New Mexico. New Mexico, I think, is a multiracial, multi-ethnic state, which has some factors. So we can find our variations on this. But your core concept is the right one. You two live in Florida. Jen has bravely and courageously run campaigns against, many odds. And so you're seeing, for lack of, I keep saying, which just doesn't have meaning. You're operating in a state that at this point is incredibly difficult in this regard. There are states that are kind of closer to the place where a Democratic Party could become functional, but is not yet so. There are other places where it won't become functional. And if we accept that, then there are some places where you should start something new, right?
Exactly.
One is an independent, one is something, as Dan Osborne, I think, chose to do in Nebraska. And as, I was out in Wyoming, and to me, I went to Wyoming to figure out the Liz Cheney thing a couple of years ago. And it was what it was. Obviously, what I wrote didn't have any real impact because the Democrats thought Liz Cheney was a useful factor for their campaign in 2024. And
I'm not sure much has changed there, John. That's the problem.
I know. So I go out to Wyoming, and I have to tell you, it's one of the more fascinating experiences I've ever had. There are two counties in Wyoming. I think it's Laramie and Teton that actually vote Democratic. Of the whole state, there are two counties that, elect Democratic commissioners, and a couple other places have a little bit of it, but basically it's this incredibly Republican state. So what has happened, fascinatingly enough, is that in most of the state, the Republican Party has divided, right? So you have Republicans who are, mega, very right-wing or more authoritarian, stuff like that. And then you have another kind of Republican that is kind of at odds with them, right? And so what you realize is in that state, they've actually created a different party system. It just exists in the Republican primary. And they fight it out in Republican primaries.
Right.
Yeah. And
but
Democrats don't do that. Democrats don't want primaries.
But that's what makes the Republican Party the varsity, and the Democrats the JV. This is the way it's been since the days of Reagan. There's one rule and only one rule. You guys want to fight it out in the primaries? You could do it from now until your heart's content. When the general election comes, you vote against the Democrat. That's the one rule. Everything else is fair game. In the Democratic Party, I'm telling you, you should have seen the looks on.
They select people.
Even with Wasserman and Schultz, you had to see the looks on certain people's faces. You can't run against another Democrat. That's not allowed.
Oh, they do it. Look, it's a big problem all over. And primaries are actually very healthy. I live in Wisconsin where, to give you an example, in most of our tough races, the breakthrough Democrat was somebody who came through a crowded primary, right? And our governor was in like a ridiculously crowded primary. You couldn't fit everybody on the stage for the debates. And he's won 2 terms now, so there's a model there that I think if you have that dynamism, that democracy. I only have a couple minutes left. I'm apologetic.
No, so all I've garnered from this, John, is that I need to relocate to Wisconsin.
Come on up. It's good. But I do want to say one thing about that 2012 race, or 1912, which you brought up. And that is you're exactly right. That was the pre-Federal Reserve race. It's also the pre-elected U.S. Senate race, right? Last time before they
were all selected.
These were dramatic changes in America that occurred in 1913, and remember, it was a 4-way race, right? You had a Democrat, Woodrow Wilson. You had a kind of independent progressive in Teddy Roosevelt running second. You had the sitting president of the United States running as a more centrist right wing, although to be honest, compared to today's Republicans, would have been a liberal. William Howard Taft running as a Republican. And then you had Eugene Victor Debs running as a very viable socialist in many states. Debs actually beat Taft in a couple of states, right? He ran ahead of the Republican in a couple of states. And all I'm telling you is that amazing dynamic competition of that year led to all sorts of shifts and twists and turns. I hold to the view that they created the Fed because they were creating an elected Senate, and because their fear was that, wow, okay, now we got to take economics out of the.
Too many people are involved now.
It's getting a little small d democratic. So we better move do some of these things. So I've always been somebody who's had some, I want to audit the Fed. I want to, I got a lot of concerns about how it operates. I hope I don't sound like Rand Paul. But
as long as there are Democrats like you that still exist, the party's not dead just yet.
But here's the problem, comrade. I'm not a Democrat.
Nope.
Links in the description. If you are not currently reading,
I'm not either.
If you're not currently reading up on Mr. Nichols at The Nation, please make sure that you do. Please pick up a copy of one of his books. You might find it entertaining. Mr. Wisconsinite, fantastic job at the polls on Tuesday. Women have the right to choose. Enough with this shit already. Thank you so much. And will you come back again in the near future?
I'm always honored to be with you both. And
I'm always you're like one of our best guests. Like I'm like excited. Like I get somebody who goes on like with the real news people.
Sometimes it's very rare. But I will say the last thing I'll say when I said I'm not a Democrat. I want to just clarify that, and then I do have to leave, and you have to go on here. Much better stuff. I want to clarify. I am what my great-grandfather made me be. My great-grandfather lived in Blue River, Wisconsin, town of 300. He was the village president. He was a La Follette progressive. And in my family, it may have variations in other states, and the progressives basically went into the Democratic Party. I understand all that. But, when I wake up in the morning, I'm still a La Follette progressive from 1912. 1924. It's my sensibility, and it's the politics. My mother's 94. That's how she votes.
That's nice.
That's where I come from.
Love the cheeseheads. Love the cheeseheads.
I'll get you one soon. You can look just like Elon.
Thank you so much, John. It was so good to see
John.
you.
Appreciate you.
Take care. Be strong.
A great man. And yes, I actually didn't know that. I didn't realize that he's an independent, just like the senator from Vermont. So that's great to know. But that's the way everybody should be. We don't need these parties anymore. In fact, as we've learned, especially in local politics, the biggest hindrance to actually getting places with potential voters, do they have a D or an R in front of their name? Once that's been established, it's almost like, yep, I don't care. Take that away, and that makes all the difference in the world. And if
I saw a
Oswald,
bunch of super chats come through before. I thought like a while ago. All right.
if you guys
Are
do
we gonna
like
do a break and do the spiel?
despite what Jen has to say, even though she thinks we're not really news, I think we do a decent job. If you are so
We're not. We're news-ish.
news-ish,
Like
Jew-ish. Go to patreon.com/generational change for as little as $5 a month. You can become a supporter of our small but mighty channel. We will have Brianna Joy Gray on as our guest next Monday. We will have lots of wonderful guests as always lining up as we go forward. We're going to be speaking with General Strike US on May the 1st, which will be, as Jen hopes, exactly 3 years to the day when perhaps this country is going to get its act together in terms of what they need to do regarding our labor force. It'd be nice, not holding out hope just yet, but we'll see what happens. And for those that checked in today, Mark J with the $2, you are pessimistic and correct. Thank you. And we appreciate that, Mark. You can be pessimistic and optimistic at the same time. There's nothing wrong with that. Denise Columbia, thank you so much for the $2. Justice has been lost in the letter of the law. Jen, do you agree with that?
Oh, long time ago. Can I answer? Shunt Guy wants to know if Springsteen was my first concert. No. Jen's first concert was actually, I was under 2. It was Bob Dylan. And I was very close. That was my very first concert. The first concert that I chose to go to, that I asked to go to, was actually The Police. And that was, yeah. It was, and I to this day still do love The Police. So it is.
You love that. Okay, so clip that. Jen says she loves The Police, and the irony of saying that, and the irony of her saying that she loves The Police is that their most popular song is called "I'll Be Watching You." So, or it's every breath you take, but the line.
Don't shit on Sting and The Police. But yeah, it is kind of funny. Like, I'm totally an abolitionist. I am completely anti the po-po. And but yet The Police was my first concert. And I was actually a really big Andy Summers fan, who's the guitarist for The Police. And I also very much like Stuart Copeland. I liked all of them. They were great. I was a Police fan. That was my jam when I was starting to go to concerts.
Message in a bottle. Some people like the 11 Demands. I'm not sure what the 11 Demands are, but thank you.
Yours was the Who 82. I saw the Who at it was still the Orange Bowl at the time when I saw the Who there. And I did see them before John Entwistle died, so I saw 3 of the 4. But given that you saw him 82, yeah, you didn't see Keith Moon either, so yeah.
Alice Walker, Chip, thank you for the $5. The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have it. That's
word.
That's a good line. That's a very good line. That's true.
True.
Most people do not realize that they actually do have power. And of course, Lila, thank you as always for checking.
Thank you, Lila.
You two kind of trade off on your making sure the numbers go up on the viewership.
Well, the thing is that, and I appreciate that, but for me, really, their show, the Punch Up guys, if you know, like, I'm usually in the chat on Sunday and Wednesday nights. That's their jam is Sunday and Wednesdays. And I generally, because it's like, it's camaraderie in a time when I find very little in real life. And that's the same reason I was on the Electronic Intifada today on the live. I'm not usually able to hit that live. But it's really important, this kind of like the solidarity. Welcome, JT 1982.
We're very happy to have you here. And this is a channel where we interact with everybody. There are times where our chat will be 100, 150 deep. We're very happy to have everybody here.
Oh, yeah.
The thing that separates our channel from a lot of other channels is that I think we have real camaraderie with our chat, with our people that are here. We know a lot of the people that are here, which is great. I think the consistency allows for very good conversation flow. We get a couple of shitbags every once in a while that will pop in. We actually had a couple of literal shitbags the other night that were posting shit emojis like right across the.
That was so funny though. Like,
yeah, but it's annoying because it spams the whole chat. You can't see anything.
Somebody spammed in the chat. It was like a whole bunch of those turd icons. I thought it was hilarious. And then they came back with eggplants, which also is kind of entertaining.
Well, that's a whole other. That's a
I
whole
know
other
what
level.
it is. I'm not a boomer.
Well, JG, thank you so much for the $5, and we hope that you're here on the regular, just as we have a pretty regular crowd, which is great.
We get some good people here. We get really good people here.
No, we totally get the best people. The
we
greatest
get good people in the chat, and we get
Very
good guests.
Excuse me, the best people, tremendous, incredible. Got one more story to cover before you guys go, and I know you're going to like it.
Do we have to do this, Megyn Kelly? Is that it?
So Glenn Greenwald was a guest on Megyn Kelly's.
I want to punch her.
And the equivocation that this bulldog of a former attorney, because she was good. Don't get me wrong. You know that Megyn Kelly's good at what she does. However, Glenn Greenwald was having none of it. But it also goes to show you how don't bring somebody like Glenn Greenwald on your podcast if you think you're going to have the type of narrative that you're trying to feed to your audience that is none the wiser. So
he's not going to have it.
This is what happened the other day.
Okay, well, there's nothing unreasonable about saying being the spokesperson for an on-campus terror group means you violated your terms of staying here and your green card is getting revoked.
I think you're
okay. Right off the bat, she is equivocating this idea that because you have a green card, you are not welcome in this country if you say something that we don't agree with. Now, this has been a talking point.
And you're telling me she's an attorney?
Oh, yeah. That's her trade. She's an attorney by trade.
She's an attorney. And she is suggesting that green card holders are not entitled to First Amendment rights. Is that my understanding? Because the only thing I know this bimbo from was some debate with Trump years back.
Well, I said that she was bleeding all over the
place.
place.
Know what she's talking about.
When I said that she was bleeding all right from just about everywhere. No, but all kidding aside, this will not end well. Going down this road is not going to end well.
All right, let's watch how Glenn handles this situation.
I think you're wildly mischaracterizing the point of this protest. I remember, very well in 2002, people who were opposed to the U.S. invasion of Iraq were told, oh, they were Saddam Hussein supporters. And they would say, no, we're not Saddam Hussein supporters. We just don't think the U.S. should invade Iraq. Same thing now. If you don't support financing Ukraine, you're told, oh, you're a Putin supporter. And you say, no, I'm not a Putin supporter. I just don't want the U.S. involved in this war.
That's a straw man.
These protests.
Bullshit.
How's that a straw man?
The straw man. See, this is the thing. She's playing Darvo narcissist games. The straw man was when she introduced the topic by saying that these are terrorist supporters protests. That's the straw man, is claiming that these protests have to do with terrorists or Hamas. So it's very interesting that she's like Darvoing him. Continue.
How about the smirk on her face? Okay.
Were about
that's a straw man,
Megyn, because these protests were against
no one
the
who was
Israeli
out on the
war
streets.
in Gaza. They were not defending Hamas.
They were demanding that Colombia divest. They were demanding that Colombia.
Exactly, but that's not a Hamas. That doesn't mean that you know that's the
straw man, bitch. That's her doing the straw man right there.
He basically gave away the game, which is you cannot criticize Israel. That's the rule. If you do, we will go all in on our propaganda. That includes you are not allowed in this country anymore. To think that we would get to a point where, because of the domestic actions on behalf of Israel, not their genocide of the Palestinian people, but because they want to shut up any form of resistance in the United States, is what will ultimately sink their ethno-state. That's how it's gonna happen. Because
now you're screwing with our rights here, which is waking up a whole bunch of other people that weren't necessarily already enraged about Israel. But yeah, I can't. Yeah, this is an attorney. This woman. It's fascinating to me. She's really shitty at arguing. Continue.
the anti-Israel protesters modeled themselves after the student movements in the 1980s that were against the apartheid regime, the main demand of which was, we demand that you divest from apartheid South Africa.
Okay.
That's what these students are
But
demanding, that we
here's the
demand. That is
problem.
a peaceful
That's fine.
protest,
The
not a violent
American
one.
students, the American students cannot be deported for having done that, but someone here on a green card can be.
Yes, they can be, because we are now an authoritarian fascist state, not because they are constitutionally supposed to be, because believe it or not, this dumb bitch, it does not matter what your citizenship status is regarding the First Amendment. It has nothing to do with it. Has nothing to do with it. So just because they can do that, because they can avoid the rule of law, because they can get away with sending people across the country without actual charges being filed, just because they can do that, but that's not what they're supposed to be doing. Like, this woman, I want to punch her. I really do. People like that make me feel like so frustrated.
Well, it's easy to get frustrated because you can see right through what they're trying to do. What they're doing is just simply trying to find whatever justification they can to support the Zionist state. That's it. There is no rhyme or reason. There is no ulterior motive. It's crystal clear. We are going to go down with the Israel ship if we're not careful. But right now, I don't see any way how we're not. And I think more and more people are going to have to kind of join the ranks, so to speak. It's going to be more students that are going to get deported, and that's going to happen.
And honestly, I can't say this enough. Students on campuses, stay in groups, stay vigilant, look out for each other. People that are citizens need to put
Have your
themselves
cameras ready. Have your cameras
and,
ready.
you
at
know,
all
like
times.
students that are citizens. And this is something I want to say, like, as somebody who has spent a lot of time in academia, and I have a lot of friends that have gone to a lot of these fancy elite schools. And I honestly, anybody who is an alum of Columbia or any of these schools, and you're not using your voice against that school, shame on you. Shame on you. You are destroying any concept of quality institutions that we may have had ever in this country. Like, this is just ridiculous at this point. I'm so disgusted. But yeah.
Can't
Your
say that
degree
we
means
blame you,
nothing.
Canadian socialist. It's been a little while since you showed up, but we're happy that you're here. And it's true. The American education system, among other things, is a huge problem. And it is
Henry.
It is, yeah, it is. Good job. Ed. It is especially egregious on Megyn Kelly's part because she does know better. She's not some yahoo, not some grifter. She actually has been on. She's been a news anchor for many years. She has a law practice. She's not stupid. She's not doing this for anything other than status. There can't possibly be any other reason. She doesn't need the money. That's not the reason. So the idea
she needs better hair extensions. Anyway, she needs something.
Women hate other women. That's like
shut up. You're always the first person to point out somebody's physicality. I rarely notice stuff like that. And I really only do it when the person is so goddamn stupid and loathsome that I sit there and I just want to be mean. Like, I don't normally go to that. That's not my normal.
Well, first of all, Megyn Kelly's a raging bitch. Like that, if you can't tell that that's a woman you don't want to be around when she's not in a good mood.
She's a cuntosaurus, is what you're saying.
You could see that she's somebody that if she's not in a good way, stay the hell out of her way because it won't be good. And a lot of people are they're just opportunistic when it comes to Israel. They do not care. And I don't know how you can look at what's happening right now and ever be forgiven or ever be given any type of justification for your behavior in lieu of what they are doing to these women and children in particular.
What makes me so sad for as a Jewish person, and this is really upsetting to me, like, I truly believe that the people, the Jews, the Ashkenazi Jews, especially in this country and whatever, that are on board with this, what they're doing is you're taking a Jewish legacy, which is one of being survivors, and now we're the perpetrators of genocide. So instead of our history being one of people that have thrived and survived. It will be one of people that turned into the oppressor. And it's so it's like I'm watching a train wreck in slow motion with the legacy of my people. It's just horrible.
So we will conclude on a fairly somber note. My very, very special companion, Ginger, crossed the Rainbow Bridge this afternoon. I wrote a little something about her before we went live. What I always say about dogs, especially ones that you have a true kinship with, there is no greater feeling that you can have with somebody that you have true unconditional love with. And it's very hard to find. Ginger was very special to me. All my pets that I've had in my family over the years have been extremely important to me, but Ginger was very, very special. She was a very intelligent dog. She was a golden doodle. She, as I put it as eloquently as I could, she had the beauties of a golden and she had the brains of a poodle. And you put those two things together and you had a remarkable dog that had an adorable howl, had always a quizzical look on her face because she was always trying to solve problems, whether it was to figure out how to open doors, which she did do, or to figure out the proper trajectory in the water to get her the ball, because she figured out exactly the most intelligent way to get it, and with the path of least resistance, or her ability to get on one of the floating devices in a pool and float. And she had endless energy. All she ever wanted to do was be in the pool. She wanted to be in the water. She wanted to play, and she could go for hours on end. And just somebody who I love more than words could ever describe. And for the past 15 years,
Ginger's Peter's person. Ginger was Peter's person.
Mm-hmm. She meant everything to me. And I love her more than she'll ever know. She had an impact on my life that will not soon be forgotten. I also, as just by happenstance, this was a last minute thing. I had to get on a plane to New Jersey early this morning. You do what you have to do for the ones that you love. And they are far and few between. With that being said, I also did make a point, because of the proximity of the area that I happen to be in New Jersey in. I went to go visit my grandfather, which I haven't had the chance to do in a long time. He, interestingly enough,
Can you please say that normally? You did not go visit your. Can you please say that so that people?
I visited my grandfather's grave site.
Thank you. Big difference, man.
My grandfather passed away not long before Ginger was born. So it kind of shows you, how life will move fast. And it does move fast. I am very grateful that I have my health, as far as I know. We all have issues, but be grateful for what you do have, and rather than what you don't have. And in terms of the greater impact, in terms of what Jen was mentioning at the beginning of the podcast, I know that Val Kilmer was somebody that a lot of people really liked. Jen is obviously a teenager of the 1980s. I'm a child of the 80s, but I remember Val Kilmer very well. I always thought he was a great talent. The first movie that I saw Val Kilmer in, ironically, was the movie with his what would be his wife, which of course was Willow. That was a very enjoyable film from what I remember as a youth. Warwick Davis, of course, has done a lot of different movies as a short actor, but he really did a great job with that film. And of course, there's been a number of films over the years that I thought he was great. And listen, I thought he was great. John Gryce, who played Uncle Rico in Napoleon Dynamite, he was in Real Genius with Val Kilmer. They were best friends for like 40 years. And
did you see Bobby Burke?
Bobby Burke, yes. I saw his great shot. And that was the only line of dialogue that Bobby Burke actually had in Tombstone. But Tombstone, of course, his role as Val Kilmer will withstand the test of time. The audacity of the Academy not to nominate him for Best Supporting Actor. And listen,
I'm with Shelley, The Doors. It was the
I
two
don't.
words.
Yeah, well, he was fantastic as Jim Morrison. And if you ever listen to the story of Jennifer Tilly tell about what the audition sequence was like in Los Angeles when every A, B, and D list actor was trying to get a role in the movie, and she said specifically when Kilmer showed up as Jim Morrison for the audition, she said the audition's over. He's got the role. Like, it's not even a question. He's going to get it.
And I know
did.
I see somebody in there mentioning one of those movies you like, Top Secret. That's not my genre.
I haven't seen Top Secret, so that's
you would like that. It's your kind of stupid crap.
I like that type of stuff, and that's
I
actually
know
his
you
first
do.
movie that he actually had a significant role in. But if you're asking me to pick my favorite movie that Val Kilmer was in, bar none, Heat is the best movie he was ever in.
He was great. All right. So, and I would like to say, in honor of Val Kilmer, I will probably replay the volleyball scene from Top Gun. And if let me tell you, to fellow Gen X women out there, it really comes down to the volleyball scene. Let's be real. Let's be real.
Yeah, that's very that's where I have to say, as a straight male, I have to say that scene is everything for all the women and all the gay men.
Oh, yes.
No
That's,
choice.
I was going to say all my fellow Gen X women and or, gay men, whatever floats your boat. But yeah, the volleyball scene.
Yeah. And of course, Val did. It was Top Gun was fun. And you know what? I thought Top Gun Maverick was actually a lot of fun as well.
I liked it, and I liked that Val Kilmer was in it. And I saw a little clip today. He approached them and wanted to be part of it, and they were very happy to have him.
Listen, say what you want about Cruise. He's just as wild as his character was said to have been. But the fact is, he's a hell of an entertainer, and I think he's got a decent heart. And he knew that Val would have really appreciated, even though at that point, Val was already, facing the effects of the throat cancer, which I guess had been in remission. But ultimately, if you've been through all he's been through and you catch pneumonia, it's not good. But he was a hell of a talent. He was a hell of an entertainer, and he's got a lot of great movies out there. Much as I will miss Ginger, I also think that when a great actor or actress passes along, and it seems to be happening quite frequently in the last few years, I felt the same way when Gene Hackman passed away. I feel the same way when Val Kilmer passes away.
Well, except for the only thing about Gene Hackman, and granted, the whole situation is.
I had a point.
And sorry.
The point I was making about Val Kilmer and Gene Hackman is that, I mean, for me, Gene Hackman may be the best actor of my lifetime, but Val Kilmer was really great in his own right. And the point I'm making is that if you haven't seen much of their work, go out there and watch it. Pick a movie that you were thinking about seeing for a long time. Maybe you decided not to. I haven't seen the movie Top Secret, and that's the first movie that Val Kilmer was ever in where he had an actual role. Like, he actually had a
I saw it in the theater, and I'm just so not that genre. I was just going to say the difference between him and Gene Hackman is Gene Hackman was just so old. Not that that's not sad, but it's like none of us is getting out of here alive. 93 is old.
95.
Okay.
And yes, I would definitely agree with that. So Top Secret is one. Top Gun is fun. Real Genius is also really good.
Tombstone is and The Doors.
His ultimate role is Doc Holliday in Tombstone, and he was fantastic as Jim Morrison.
He owned that movie. He did.
He did. I think he was an okay Batman. I don't think he was bad. I think Joel Schumacher wasn't a great director for that type of a film. But ironically enough, because Joel Schumacher destroyed the Batman franchise, that's how we got Christopher Nolan to make 3 of the greatest films I've ever seen. So everything has a way sometimes.
I'm still with Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson.
Michael Keaton. Christian Bale is the best Bruce Wayne. Michael Keaton is the best Batman.
Right,
and
Michael
I
Keaton
not
is
want to hear
Batman
anybody
to me.
against him. But in the end, if you haven't seen the movie Heat with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino with Val Kilmer as kind of like the Joe Pesci role in Lethal Weapon 2, basically the same. It not top billing, but pretty close. And
yeah, Denise, The Doors is awesome.
Yeah. That's definitely what I would recommend. And yes, Michael Mann, like Christopher Nolan, phenomenal directors. They have their own style, their own vision. I appreciate great art. I do. And that's where filmmaking, I think, could be very powerful. I actually like theater. I actually like seeing actors who really get it. I don't think I'm going to have the opportunity to do this while I'm in town, but to be honest, I'd like to see Bill Burr and a cast of other fantastic characters do Glengarry Glen Ross on Broadway. Like,
Yeah,
that's
that
the
does look
thing
cool.
that
I'm not as much of a theater person.
but that to me is fun. Like, I saw A Bronx Tale at the Performing Arts Theater in Fort Lauderdale, and that was a decent show. It wasn't, incredible, but it was fun, and I think that
It's not my
like I said,
jam.
but the medium of performance, I think, is key. Kilmer really embodied the characters that he was playing, and
yeah.
Michael Green, who is a really good character actor, as I'm sure you know, Jen, he played Johnny Ringo in Tombstone, and they asked him the other day when he passed away, what were your thoughts on Val Kilmer? He says, I don't know, I never met the guy, but I met I met Doc Holliday, and he was pretty awesome. So that goes to show you.
Well, something happened to Val Kilmer after they made The Doors, where he was like really went off the deep end, very stuck in Jim Morrison. Something I remember back then, like there was all this sort of weird stuff, like he was reclusive. There was all like he like got all in his head.
That's possible. But that said, I just believe that, you should live every day, not like it's your last, but just make sure that every day counts. That's what I say. Jen has a couple of furry friends that are up there in age, and it
Yes,
definitely,
my little one I care more about than the other, so we'll leave it at that.
ugh, so terrible to say that, but all kidding aside, they are our companions in life. They matter so very, very much, as Ginger did to me. There you go, Shelley. Tombstone is a great movie to watch.
Tombstone is a good movie.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Some actors do have too much method. I agree, but that's the Lee Strasberg school of acting. But I will tell you, even if there is too much method, every once in a while, that's when you're going to get the greatest films, the greatest roles you've ever seen, and you'll forget that you're watching that person. You'll think that they are that person. So with that said, smash that like button.
Wait, what do we have coming up?
We've got Brianna Joy Gray on Monday, so hopefully you guys will tune in for that. That'll be an interesting conversation. Yes, we will have Punch Up Pod on. I think we could do a crossover pod with them again soon. That would be a fun thing to do. We will be constantly burning and churning to find out who the next great guests on our show are going to be. So with that said, we appreciate you all. Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things we ask you to do. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you Monday.
Free Palestine.
Free Palestine.